Hey, welcome guys. Today we're going to be building Tamiya's brand new, their 2024 Panzer I. Now, this is a brand new kit, at least while we're recording this video. This is the Sd.Kfz 101. If you watched my review, I'm very excited about this kit for, yes, the tank that you see in front of you, but also the variants that could come from it and that kind of pre-era part of history, the pre-war era, that we don't have a lot of subjects from in model building that I wish we had more of. So we'll get started in a minute. Obviously, you see the finished product here in front of you. It is a very, very small tank. That being said, it has fiddly parts, it has small parts, yes, but they are engineered so well. There really aren't a lot of issues here. If you've watched Andy's Hobby Headquarters build of this, he lost the taillight. I lost the same one. I found it at the end, but it was too late. I already glued this one on, so it is what it is. You might drop one or two pieces here or there. Don't do it over the carpet. Try to keep pieces over the table, but it's a really nice kit, and there aren't too many things that I think are going to be frustrating like other small kits. This compared to the Tacom half track I built felt a million times less fiddly, and I don't know, it was a lot less frustrating, and it's about the same size, maybe slightly less parts, but as you see here, we are building up the lower hull, and unlike Tamiya historically has done the bathtub style hull. This is like 5 different parts here, with one of the parts being, a little bit of bracing between the two side panels. This builds up perfectly. And pretty much at this point, you know that you're in for just a great build. Perfect engineering, typical Tamiya where they'll have, two different size holes for a piece like this, for this like spring or shock that we're putting on in the suspension element, that it can only be fitted on one way. And it completely takes out, the ability for you to mess it up, which is awesome because we mess things up, right? Especially when we're building and there's a lot of parts and everything like that. So we're going to go ahead, and there's not too much to do here on the suspension. They molded in a pretty good amount on those side panels, which is a benefit of, not being a bathtub style hull. It allows them to mold a lot more detail in there. There are poly caps that go into these pieces where the front sprockets are going to fit later. So be careful with the glue, although you don't have to be too careful. Um, they'll still turn even if the poly caps get cemented in place. They'll just be a lot harder. But next up, we're going to put some little, this is where the return rollers are going to go, some little arms for them to attach to. And that is pretty much everything that's going to go into the suspension here. There's about 4 of those on each side. And then we have a little bit of work to do, and this is where we see our first truly small pieces come into play here. There are some little kind of like tow hooks that are going to go into the rear plate or panel of the hull. The next piece this is in step 3. This is like B49 and B48. Well, we have to attach one more, but it's funny. The instructions call out that you have to do it in a certain order, because there is a rod that you'll see that gets inserted between these two pieces on the ends. And look at how well that fits. You don't have to do it in that order. I started to do it in that order, and then I dropped this middle piece, and it fits in just fine. So you don't have to be all that careful. The thing that you have to be careful with is that this rod, one end has a tiny pin at the end and the other end is rounded. And as you can see, the piece on the right side of the screen, it ends, right? Meaning that that's where that side with the pin is going to go. So I actually have it backwards at the moment, and I will realize that very shortly. You could still attach it like that, but it wouldn't go flush into that piece. So here you can see I'm doing step 2, during step 3, and it's fine. Then the other thing is you just want to make sure that that little notch is pointing upwards. It will fix into place as long as you get it close enough. You don't have to be perfectly exact with it. The kit takes care of that element, which is awesome. Then a couple other, some nuts and bolts and things going on the rear panel. And again, these aren't overly small pieces. You would see this in very similar pieces in the Panzer IV build, which is obviously much bigger than this, but nothing too crazy here. You can see that little headlight I have next to B13. That is the piece that I lose. And then I will drop another piece from this kit later, which I will fully lose that one. Good thing there were extras in the kit, but I will find that headlight, but it will be too late. Now, I don't really care. I was trying to follow, option A on this kit. I guess it's now AC or AB, whatever it is. So be it. It's not a detail I'll ever remember. And it's nice. It's nice to be able to have a backup part. So once we get that in place, we are almost done here. And that is why you wanted that little notch pointing upwards. You will not be able to attach that piece if you do not do that. Next up, we're going to do drive sprockets, road wheels, idlers, everything like that. It's interesting because it has you build 2 road wheels first. And then in kind of 2 steps from now, you're going to build like 8 road wheels. You can do it like that. You can build all 10 at once, really. You can tell which pieces are which. The important part is that A19, which we have right here, has a sealed end to it. And the other 8 road wheels are going to go into like a bogey. So you can figure out which ones are which. You wouldn't be able to put this piece in the bogey. Again, nice of Tamiya to make it so we can't mess it up. Now, these road wheels are very interesting because the rubber is 2 different pieces, as you can see, and you cement it around the rim. Now, it will still give us some very nice ability to do some definition on the road wheel portion, the black portion of it, but it does leave us with a seam running down the middle of the tire. It's not really a big seam, and might be able to even cover it up with paint, but we're going to go ahead, and there was a good amount of sanding that we had to do to cover up that seam and make sure that our road wheels are flush all the way through. As you can see, the return roller that I have here, I would suggest putting those on first before you put the others on. They have a small notch in them. And what's different from other kits, like building the 70A, probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now that I built it, that in the actual track, it has a notch where the track has to go. These don't have that, which is interesting, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But that return roller still does have a notch where, you can really glue the tracks down and make sure that they're not going to move around or have any play in them. So it is still important to get that on there first. Now that we have that stuff built and glued on the tank, we are moving on to the bogies. So nothing really crazy here. Again, the pieces, yes, they are directional, and I would still take a look at the directions just to see, hey, do I want this piece left or right, or whatever it may be. But Tamiya again has made it impossible for you to mess up. If you mess up, the pieces won't fit flush together, and that'll be that. In gluing these together, I was so careful with the glue, and I was able to get maybe 60% of the wheels to spin. As you can see, that one has some glue on it. I'm trying to see if I can work the glue out. I would not advise doing that because I ended up snapping a small piece, which I was able to fix, but they're very small parts and they couldn't take the tension to kind of break up that glue. So I wanted the road wheels to spin to make them easier for painting. Again, 60-70% of them will be able to spin, some won't, but it is what it is. Sorry for the fire truck passing by, if you could hear that. Next up, we're going to attach those bogies, and once again, these are directional, so you cannot put them in the wrong direction. There is a small notch that basically says you can only put it on this way, which is awesome because they each kind of are pointing at each other, and it would be pretty easy to probably mess that up. But Tamiya thought ahead and thought about all the people like myself that would have put those on wrong and made it so we can't. Next up, tracks. If you have built link-in-length tracks before, these are exactly what you would expect, except we get, I guess they're technically not link-in-length because there's 2 links is the shortest that we get, which frankly I think is nice because it's less parts that we have to clean up and sand and hold and glue and do all that, right? So nice of them to put 2 of them together. It also has to do with the fact that, you know, they're tiny, so doing these individually, I don't know, might end up snapping a piece or losing pieces, and this helps us, the modeler, out a little bit. So that's nice. But we're just going to apply our extra thin cement. Pretty much get everything, do one side at a time, of course, but we're going to glue everything with that extra thin in a kind of continuous stage here. Now, I do have the tracks on backwards right now. Past me has not realized that yet, but we will realize it before it's too late, don't worry. But that is always something to pay attention to, and something that about a quarter of the time I find myself putting them on backwards. It's very easy to do it, and it is what it is. The good thing about this kit is there's not much difference in shape from the front to the back. Honestly, you could put them on and the pre-sag that's built into those tracks still looks fine, but we wanted to correct it, so I did. But this is where you can see there's no particular notch for that return roller to slot into, which is interesting. It definitely helps us in a kit like the 70A. It really helps you align the tracks perfectly. While I've said this in pretty much every video that I've done link and length tracks, Tamiya's tracks are really, really tight. Now, it's a good thing once they're built and glued, but they're really tight, and there is very little wiggle room once you have them on. So I believe they're still backwards right here, but I'm letting them dry, and now it looks like I have them corrected. So get them put on, put some tape around them. I do leave one end open. I've left the back open. Again, I put them on backwards. I generally like to leave the end by that front sprocket because it has a poly cap in it and can spin. It's generally easier to put it on. I didn't do that, so it is what it is. We'll work through it. But let them dry at least a couple hours. Like overnight if you can. This is a great step to do overnight, or right before you go to bed. That way they are nice and set up. Obviously make sure that they're ready to dry and set up, because there's no real going back from that, right? When you wake up the next morning. I love the Tamiya masking tape for this, especially when you're trying to get them to close like this, so that they dry in that position. If you don't get them to dry in that completely 100% closed position, it's really hard to get that last track to fit in. Next up, we are already working on the upper hull. Now, we have a little vent to glue in here, which fits in perfect. and then a little piece that is going to kind of cover up the rear of the lower hull. After that, we have our upper hull going on, and I'm going to take this off again just to show you how perfectly there it fits perfect. There's a little bit of gluing that you're going to have to do because it's such a big piece. So I'm going to glue it in stages. If you hold it, flat on like the two pieces together, you're going to see that there's a little bit of room in the front, and you push down the back, and now you can see the room in the front. You push down the front, you can see the room in the back. But if you just glue it like from the front all the way back and keep pinching those pieces down, there will be zero seams, zero gaps, anything like that. It fits really, really well. And then we have some, losing the word, we have some panels and like doors here that we're going to put on. These you could find a way to pose them in an open position. There's no interior of this tank, so we're not going to do it, obviously, but there's a way you could do it, but they're not meant to. These are directional pieces again. So there is like basically 2 dots you want up top and 1 dot you want below. They can't slot in the other way. If you do, they won't sit flush, and you'll know that you put the piece in backwards. It is very nice. You'll see me do this with all of these parts, and you have to be careful. I'm going to glue from the inside, right? Because this is a really small tank, all of these small parts give us a ton of detail. But with the extra thin cement, it is so easy to flood parts with glue, which by the time that glue melts, but by the time it dries, it kind of melts these pieces together. Now, you just need to be really careful where you're holding these panels and make sure you're not applying too much pressure. If you apply too much pressure, your thumb or finger, whatever you're using to hold it, is going to obviously press into that piece, and you risk getting that dreaded thumbprint on your piece. And it's really hard to come back from that. So don't put too much pressure if you're going to do it like that. Just, if you can, use your fingernail in the middle of that panel or door and just hold it in place there. And then you can keep doing that gluing from the inside and conserving all of the great detail in this kit. Now we'll show you some of the really fiddly parts here. These little hooks that are going to go, there's like maybe 6 of them around the vehicle. They give you 8 or 9 or 10 in the sprues, which is great because this is the piece I was talking about earlier that I lost. Thank you, Tamiya, for giving us others. They knew that some of these would probably get launched by pliers across the room and never be seen again. So again, it's nothing too crazy. I've seen worse pieces, but once you put it in, they hold without glue. They fit really, really well. So you won't risk, sometimes you put a piece in, you put the glue in, and the piece moves and then falls into the glue, things like that. You won't have that with this, which is really nice. And then we left most of the tools off, but things like the fire extinguisher that are going to get painted the same color, we can go ahead and put on before we get to maybe my favorite step in this kit, which is coming up in about a minute here. But the next 2 steps, this step and the next one, is a lot of tools and stuff, so you can put them on if you want. We're going to go ahead again and skip that and just paint them separately. And there you can see I'm really making sure to not hold that piece anywhere but in the exact middle of it, just because that glue will come out the other end, especially if you're pushing down on it. If you push down hard on a piece with the extra thin, you're going to get that little bead that comes out, which is going to melt things together that sometimes shouldn't be melted together. So some very small headlights that we're going to be putting on here. This is another one of those directional pieces that can only be, it gives you like this, a semicircle, a half circle that it's going to slot right into. So that is really, really nice there because you don't have to worry about it, showing a little bit to the left or right or anything like that. And same with these, we'll call them headlights, that are going to go on the left and right side of the front of the tank. They slot in just perfectly well. There's no play front or back. So you don't have to worry about, where are they pointing? Does it look realistic? Anything like that. Which for headlights, it's really easy to, you glue them and you look at it a minute later and you got to adjust them and you keep adjusting them and they never look quite right. Now you could cement the top and the bottom together, which you are supposed to do before you put these two little hooks on. I dry fitted and figured out you don't have to, which is good because if you put the top half on, it's going to be really difficult to get the tracks back on if you glue that together. So we're going to keep it separate for now until we get those tracks to, painted separately and fit them on the tank. So that's really, really nice. Now, maybe the coolest part of this kit, just because I haven't seen something like this before, we've seen it with tracks. We have a photo etch jig that Tamiya has given us in this kit. And that is because we have this one piece of photo etch that's going to go around the exhaust, or it's the muffler cover, whatever it's called. And it needs to be obviously in that perfect kind of half circle. So it's again a directional piece, and it's directional in the jig as well. So you cannot put it on wrong. You don't have to worry about what is the front and what is the back of that photo etch. You just have to get it to slot in directionally, and that will be the right way. Once you have that on, the piece kind of cinches itself closed, and you can just set that aside and let that shape really take hold. Next up, we're going to do the exhaust. And this is interesting because this calls for a separate color. And I love this color that Tamiya has suggested. It's like 2 parts red-brown and 1 part, I think it's the metallic gray, whatever XF56 is. And the color comes out and looks really, really nice, especially if you're going to do rust effects. It's kind of the perfect base for that. It gives it that reddish brown with that just hint of metallic kind of sparkle to it. But you wouldn't be able to put the photo etch on. You wouldn't be able to glue this all into place and leave it off and paint it separate. Like most times we can leave the exhaust off and paint it separately. You can't do that here. You'd have to leave at least like 5 or 6 pieces off the tank and paint them all separately. It has the exhaust cover over it, which is not painted the same color as the exhaust and ends up hiding a lot of it. So if you're super into that detail, I would suggest not gluing this all together right now. I guess I'm just not going to paint the exhaust any color except the base color. So just something to kind of know about going into it, or have to, make a plan, think about it, whatever. Because it is very difficult to pre-paint that part. Or come back and paint it later, for that matter. Once we put that photo etch piece on, we're going to attach the piece that my left thumb is holding. And basically you just bend the photo etch down and it cinches it in place. Now I ended up putting a touch of glue on those connections, but once that piece is in place, that photo etch isn't going to come out unless you really pulled it out, and I don't know why you would. But if you want to be safe, put a little super glue or something on the ends of those and you'll be fine. It's not going anywhere. And you can see that curve that jig gave us is perfect. There are no kind of indents or creases or anything like that. It's really, really nice. Once we have that kind of glued into place and set up, we're going to attach that to the upper hull, and that's going to close in the back of our upper hull. Next up, we're going to work on the jig a little bit, or not the jig, I'm sorry, the jack, J-word, and get that glued into place. There are some tools that go onto that, but again, we're going to leave them off to make painting a little bit easier. Now, this piece is interesting. This is like A23, and then there's another one that goes on the other side. This side is a lot easier to figure it out. The other side's a little bit more difficult. There are no indicating marks as to where to put this. You can follow the directions and figure out, hey, it's basically got to go in between those two rivets. But again, not 1000% clear on where to put it. It's only on the A version of this kit. It's not on B or C, which is why if they put an indicator mark, it would kind of ruin B and C, right? So they had to do something there. I attached the hose. I didn't want to because it gets painted a different color, but it was going to be really hard to hold it in place, and I don't know. We'll figure that out. I wanted to do it separately, but I thought it was going to be a little bit less tight to the tank than it is. Once I glued it in place, I realized there's not really any wiggle room if I mess up hand painting it. So this piece is, even though it's not the smallest piece, it is really thin, so it could be in scale, this like wood grain antenna holder. This is maybe like the most fiddly piece in the kit. Obviously, you'd think it's going to be, you know, the really small pieces, the little hooks and cables and things, but that piece was a lot more fiddly to attach and get in the right position than others. Once you have it, it clicks, but if you apply too much pressure, it, like you could see in my hand, kind of just, you know, breaks into two pieces again. The antenna in this kit also, it snapped immediately. I even used a trick to kind of try to cut the sprue away and cut the main part of the sprue in half, which takes some tension off, and just doing that snapped the antenna. It goes, you know, I put it in the holder. I guess you could put it sticking up. I did not because I knew I would break it later. But that is, it's the most delicate part of the kit. It's paper thin. The good news is that we're going to glue it, at least in our case, inside of that antenna holder, so you won't even really be able to tell that I ever did that. But just take as much care as you can with that. Good luck. I hope you don't snap it. I snap like every antenna, at least the kits that come with it. It's kind of just tradition at this point. Now we are working on the turret. We are closing in on the end here. So these guns, there's one that goes on the right and one that goes on the left, and it's pretty easy to figure out which is which if you look at the instructions. One has like a little, you know, more to the bottom of it than the other does. That goes on the right. They do slot in, and there is a natural place for them to stop, but they don't hold in place, and obviously they want to kind of fall backwards out of the turret because of the weight of the piece. So it is a little bit difficult to get these to sit in the right place. And what I did was I just let them sit for about 10 minutes, and then you'll have to come back and you'll have to adjust, make sure they're both looking in the right directions, and, you know, one's not pointing up and down, because I did have that after I attached these doors as the pieces get pushed around a little bit, but just give yourself a little time to correct it. These doors are definitely pretty difficult to put on. Once they're in place, they fit perfect, but you're going to do that a lot and drop them and everything like that. So just take your time, be patient with those. Know that they will be a little bit difficult, but nothing crazy. And once they're in place, they really make sure and hold those guns in there. And there is no trouble at all putting them over the guns. As long as the guns are in the right spot, the fit there is absolutely perfect. Then we have a little gun sight that we're going to put into the middle. And that is pretty much the entire armament of this vehicle. So once we have that, we are ready to basically attach it into this turret once we glue the bottom of that in place. And look at that, how that just falls into place there. I wanted to take that off just to show again just how well some of this kit is engineered. It's amazing. Old kits are great too, and they all have their place, but the places that we're going in this hobby are really, really promising. And I don't know, it's really exciting. Call me a nerd, but it's fun. And it's fun to see what people have come up with from an engineering standpoint to do certain things and make it easy and fun for us, the modeler, to build these kits. Now, here's a couple more tiny pieces that are going to go. There's 3 of them on the top of the turret. It's part number A7. They are some little hooks. Yes, fiddly, tiny. Glue them to the tank first and then sand them later, or else you will lose them because there's no real easy way to hold them. When you put this, this front door, whatever you want to call it, that holds the 2 guns on the turret, you will notice, obviously, it looks a little bit ugly on top. Once you put that piece that I'm gluing right now onto the top, it hides all of the gap that was there and really, especially from the front, really seals it in and makes it look like one piece. Again, that is just a perfect example of the engineering in this kit. And then we have a couple doors. Again, they are directional, so you cannot really mess them up, that are going to go on this kit. And that is pretty much going to solidify the turret, aside from one door that we have to put on. So this is that same piece I was saying. On the other side doesn't have any indicator marks. On this side doesn't either. The difference is I couldn't for the life of me figure out if this piece is gonna be like leaning or like sticking straight up. So I ended up going with the leaning. I don't know. You could do a little bit more research. I didn't care that much. It is what it is. Next up, you'll see those 4 kind of sanding marks on the door, like the top of the turret. That is the only indicator or pin marks. I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head, but that is the only place where you're going to really have to sand and that you'll be able to see those. If you don't do the figure, you don't have to worry about that. Put the turret in the hatch in a closed position. Otherwise, you will have to do a little bit of cleanup there. I chose to do the figure on this kit because it's really easy, because the figure is like all black basically, aside from like his hands and belt buckle. So nothing too crazy to worry about there, and we do have some nice insignia that's going to go with him. Tow cable comes in 3 pieces and has a nice natural sag built in, and with that, we are done. So if you've made it this far, as always, if you haven't already, I would ask you to please like and subscribe. We will be doing many more model kits on this channel. Next up on this kit, we will be painting, like priming, painting, doing some decals on this kit. I'm going to do this in a overall German gray. I actually really like German gray. I don't know why it kind of, people think it's like boring. There's a lot you can do with it, with like light gray undertones and kind of blue undertones and things like that. And I think it ends up weathering really well and looking really great. So there's some nice camo patterns you could do as well. If I ever built another, maybe I would do an early war or kind of that pre-war 2-tone camo. But this kit was an absolute blast to build. I would highly suggest it. It's around $32 US on Tamiya's website, and as of a couple days ago was on sale for $26. That's really crazy value for such a well-made kit. It is not a lot of plastic and things like that, so I don't know, you'd have to measure it like bang for your buck, but it is a weekend build. You could definitely put this together and get it painted and everything in a weekend. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will leave you with the finished product here for 30 seconds or so, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.